There are moments in life that shatter your very soul, that reforge you from the inside out. For me, that moment wasn't on a battlefield, but in the sterile, hushed chaos of a neonatal intensive care unit. My son Jude entered this world at just 25 weeks and 2 days. He weighed barely 400 grams, and I remember staring at that number on his Nike U chart as if it were some kind of cruel, impossible joke. 14 ounces. I'd carried a grenade heavier than that in Afghanistan. He came out purple, silent, and tiny enough to fit in my hand. There was no dramatic cry, just the hiss of machines, the chaos of wires, and nurses shouting like it was a military operation. My husband, Harrison, was on deployment training an ocean away. I texted him, "He's here. Alive." Barely. He called me back crying. I couldn't. I didn't have time. The NICU became my new battlefield. For those first 2 weeks, I slept in a hospital recliner. The beeping of the oxygen monitor, my new alarm clock. I knew his stats better than the nurse's oxygen saturation, heart rate, and respiratory rate. I memorized the baselines and panicked at the decimals. Jude had no shortage of fight. That kid would stop breathing for half a second and then punch back up like, "Not today." The nurses called him a micro-preemie. I called him my son. And for those first weeks, I didn't leave for a shower or a meal. I learned how to sleep upright and cry quietly. People think NICUs are quiet places, full of whispers and soft lights. They're not. They're full of alarms, suction sounds, and nurses who curse under their breath. Harrison tried to come back early, but military bureaucracy is slower than molasses. I told him to stay and keep the insurance active. Between the emergency C-section, the airlift, and the hospital bills, we were already bleeding savings. He wanted to be there, but I told him that being useful was more critical. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. "He's a fighter," one said. "Might get to take him home in 8 weeks if things go well." That sounded like years. I didn't tell my family right away. My parents, Walter and Lillian, hadn't exactly been front row material in my life, and the idea of them being near Jude made my skin crawl. But eventually, after 2 weeks, I called. "He's doing okay. Small but stable." My mother, Lillian, responded, "Oh wow, he's already born." She said they'd visit sometime. My sister, Valerie, was in the middle of a scholarship interview tour and couldn't be pulled away. I didn't fight it. I didn't have the energy. Then came the first big setback. Jude's oxygen levels plummeted during the night. The alarm didn't beep, it screamed. I shot up like I'd heard gunfire. A nurse named Patricia was already at his side when I reached the incubator. She looked at me and said, "He's going to be okay, but you need to let us work." I stood frozen while they fixed it, adjusted the tube, and stabilized the airflow. Within minutes, his little chest was rising and falling again. I went to the hallway, leaned against the wall, and heaved into a trash can. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a hospital stay. This was a war. And unlike the war I trained for, I couldn't carry a weapon or armor. I just had to stay alert, stay upright, stay in the game. I didn't think it could get harder. I thought that night was the low point. But turns out, I hadn't even met the real enemy yet. I knew they were coming when I saw a visitor badge in my mother's Facebook photo. I didn't even get a call, just a selfie with the caption, "Finally seeing our miracle grandson." Miracle, huh? That's rich coming from people who couldn't remember his due date. I sat in that NICU room with Jude's vitals blinking beside me, waiting for them like I used to wait for mortar fire. The first face through the door was my mother, Lillian's, followed by my father, Walter's, stiff posture, and my sister, Valerie's, overly perfect makeup. She was dressed like she was heading to a brunch in LA, not walking into a sterile medical ward. My mother wore heels. She wrinkled her nose at the hand sanitizer station as if it offended her personally. "Is that him?" she asked, peering into the incubator like Jude was a museum exhibit. "He's so small." "He's premature, Mom. He's alive. That's what matters." She didn't say anything to that, just clutched her designer purse tighter and stepped back. Valerie barely glanced at Jude. She was already pulling out her phone, flipping the camera, checking her angles. I watched her open her Instagram stories and start recording herself whispering, "About to meet my baby nephew. Keep me in your prayers. Big day ahead." She didn't even aim the camera at Jude. "He's beautiful," I said out loud, mostly to myself. Valerie looked up from her phone. "Is he supposed to be that color? Has got underdeveloped lungs. He's doing better every day." Dad leaned in close to the monitor. "So, what does this one do?" "That's his oxygen saturation," I said, keeping my tone flat. "That red light means it's good." He stared at it like he was trying to find a place to charge his laptop. "Can we take pictures with him?" Mom asked. "No flash, and no contact outside the approved schedule. He's immunocompromised." Mom huffed like I'd said she couldn't hold a puppy. "You're being a little uptight, Grace. I'm tired. I've been here every day for over 2 weeks. You showed up with perfume and high heels." She waved that off like I was being dramatic. "It's just a visit." Valerie finally looked away from her phone. "Hey, do you guys have a charger? My phone's about to die and I have my scholarship interview call in like an hour." "There's a lounge down the hall," I said, not moving. "The Wi-Fi's terrible in there," she whined. "And the lighting's crap?" "That's not my problem." Dad was already scanning the room like he was on a damn treasure hunt. His eyes landed on the outlet behind the incubator, with its bright red sticker "Menimi Hiqip Memdelway." He pointed. "Don't even think about it," I snapped. "It's just a plug. That plug is for his oxygen monitor." But he reached out anyway. "Don't," I said, louder this time. Too late. He unplugged the monitor like he was swapping a lamp cord at home. Jude's vitals disappeared from the screen. The machine didn't beep, it screamed. A long, piercing tone made every nurse on the floor pivot like a missile lock. "Why is it doing that?" Dad asked, still holding the charger cable. Valerie stepped forward with her phone. "Can we plug it in just for 5 minutes? My interview?" "Put the damn phone down!" I shouted. Nurse Patricia ran in like her shoes were on fire. "Step back," she barked. Jude's chest was barely rising. Patricia leaned over the incubator, checking his pulse manually, waving another nurse over to reconnect the equipment. "He's desaturating now." My mother put a hand on my arm. "Honey, calm down. It's not like he's dying." I shoved her hand away. "You unplugged his life support for a phone call? He's fine?" Dad said. "Babies are tough." Patricia turned to them with a look I'd never seen before. "Out. All of you. Security's on the way. You can't kick us out!" Mom gasped. "We're family." "You just endangered a NICU patient," Patricia snapped. "I should have you arrested." Valerie was still staring at her screen. "It says it's only at 12%. Just let me..." Patricia growled, stepping in front of her. Security came not fast enough for my taste, but firm. They escorted all 3 out while my parents complained about rudeness and overreaction. Valerie trailed behind them, still holding her phone, pouting like a toddler. Jude's oxygen was back up by then, but only just. His tiny face was pale and his chest was working overtime. I stood there, watching my baby fight to breathe, and I realized something I should have known all along. My family didn't come to support me. They came for pictures, for posts, for optics. Not for Jude, not for me. I didn't sit down after they left. I couldn't. My whole body was buzzing like I'd swallowed electricity. Patricia stayed close, double-checking every connection, like she didn't trust anyone anymore. I didn't blame her. She didn't say much, just gave me a tight nod and a glass of water. I didn't drink it. I stood by Jude's incubator like a bouncer outside a club. Harrison called right as security was walking them out. I didn't answer. I knew I couldn't talk without either sobbing or committing a federal crime over the phone. Instead, I just stared at Jude's face, pale but pinkening up again, like he was slowly fighting his way back from the edge they'd pushed him to. Patricia looked up. I filed the incident report already, and we pulled the security footage. "You don't need to say a word to them again. I got this." It was the first time in 2 weeks I felt like someone in that hospital was on my side professionally and personally. Still, there was one thing I couldn't stop hearing. Not the alarms, not the chaos. It was my mother's voice, sugary and dismissive. Calm down, Grace. It's just 5 minutes. It wasn't 5 minutes. It was 2 minutes and 17 seconds. That's how long the monitor was unplugged. That's how long it took Jude to desaturate. That's all it took to prove they didn't take his life seriously. Security gave me a written incident summary to keep. I tucked it into my diaper bag. Not because I had a plan yet, just because I knew I'd need it. I could feel it like a muscle memory, from back when I had to log every supply detail in a combat zone, because you never knew when someone would try to pretend it didn't happen. An hour later, I was walking to the vending machine when I saw my sister again. She was sitting in the hallway outside the NICU, across from the glass wall, alone. Her legs were crossed, and she looked as if she were at some networking mixer. She wasn't crying. She was tapping furiously on her phone. I stopped in my tracks. "You're still here?" She didn't look up. Security said I could wait in the public corridor. They only banned Mom and Dad from re-entry. I didn't reply. I wasn't about to give her a second more of my breath. Then, without looking up, she said, "I didn't know it would do that. I thought the baby was asleep." "The baby," I repeated. "Yeah, Jude." Her voice was defensive now. "I didn't mean for anything bad to happen. I just needed a place with good signal." "There's a charger in the parent lounge?" "I told you, it's not the same." The walls in their mess with the video quality. I took a step closer. "So you chose signal over safety?" She finally looked up. "You're overreacting." "Wrong answer." "Overreacting?" I repeated. "You stood there. You watched him turn blue. You didn't even flinch. I had an interview," she snapped. "It was a huge opportunity. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get into Johns Hopkins? 1 interview slot, 1 shot?" I laughed. A sound loud enough that 2 nurses down the hall turned their heads. "You know what's harder?" I said. "Breathing. When you're 14 ounces with underdeveloped lungs. That's hard?" She rolled her eyes, as if I were being dramatic again. "Everything doesn't have to be about you, Grace. You made your choices. You joined the army. You skipped med school. That's fine, but don't take it out on me now." "You almost killed my son." "I didn't touch him." "You didn't have to," I said. "You stood there while Dad unplugged his monitor. You wanted it. You needed it. And you let them risk his life so your background lighting wouldn't flicker during your big moment." Valerie stood up. She was taller than me now and used every inch of her height as if she thought she could tower over my moral outrage. "You're bitter," she said flatly. "You're jealous that I'm doing something with my life?" I didn't hit her. Not physically. I just said, "You'll never be a doctor, not after today." And I walked away. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just dropped the truth and left her standing there, like someone who realized, maybe for the first time, that actions have consequences. Back in the ICU, Nurse Patricia raised her eyebrows when she saw my face. "You okay?" "No," I said. "But I'm focused." She nodded like she knew exactly what that meant. I sat beside Jude and watched his chest rise and fall, the monitor blinking steadily. His heart rate was a little fast, but stable. His breathing, though shallow, was expected. He was holding on. I glanced at the camera mounted in the corner of the NICU ceiling. "Does that run 24/7? I asked. Patricia nodded. "Always?" "Part of the security protocol." I leaned back in the chair, finally letting my spine touch the cushion. I didn't relax, but I felt a shift, like I'd found the one thing stronger than rage-proof. I didn't go back to my hospital room right away. I walked down to the parking lot first. Not because I needed air. I hadn't since the army taught me how to run 5 miles on spit and spite, but because I needed space to keep from putting a fist through a wall. I called Harrison. He picked up on the first ring. "What happened?" "I think they just tried to kill our son with a phone charger." There was a beat of silence. Then, "I'm coming home." "No," I said. "Finish your training. We need the insurance more than we need your fists on my dad's jaw." Another silence, then a low exhale. "Is Jude okay?" His breathing. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now." I hung up before I could cry. Then I went back up. Security had already logged the incident. The NCU staff were walking on eggshells around me now, not because they thought I was dangerous, but because they knew I wasn't going to pretend this didn't happen. Patricia gave me a look that said she'd back me up no matter what. Honestly, I don't think I could have handled that moment without her. The worst part was the quiet. After they left, the room felt empty in a different way. Before, it was just me and Jude, the hum of machines, and the low buzz of hope. Now, it felt like that hope had been poisoned, like the air in the room still reeked of entitlement, hairspray, and bad intentions. I stayed up all night. Jude had 2 more minor desaturation episodes. Nothing critical, but enough to keep me upright, staring at the monitor with a notebook in my lap. I started writing everything down. Time of visit. Monitor unplugged. Respiratory team called. Oxygen restored. Security notified. My rage level off the chart. Patricia came by with a coffee around 6000 m. "You look like you slept in a war zone," she said. I looked at her. I did. I was still staring at the camera in the corner of the ceiling. "You said that's always recording." "Yeah, why? I want a copy of yesterday?" She nodded slowly. "You thinking lawsuit?" "I'm thinking survival." We didn't speak again. But she returned with a name and an internal request form. Technically, only legal can release footage. But if you file this and push it through patient relations, it starts the process. I filled it out immediately. That morning, I got a text from my mother. Not an apology, not a question about how Jude was doing. It was a screenshot of her Facebook post, meeting our miracle grandson for the first time. What a precious little fighter. They'd taken selfies. They'd posted them. They'd even tagged the hospital. The comment section was full of heart emojis and sending prayers. I didn't reply. Then Valerie posted a video. It was a carefully edited clip of her whispering in the NICU hallway with dramatic background music and a caption about witnessing the strength of the smallest humans. It didn't include the part where she asked to unplug a medical device for a better shot. It had over 20,000 views in the first hour. I reported the video for misinformation. Then I took a screenshot of everything, her profile, the comments, the bio that read, "Future MD Women in STEM and ICU Advocate." The hypocrisy made me want to throw my phone across the room, but I didn't. I made a folder on my drive instead, labeled it, "Calm Down, Grace." Then I added timestamps. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight them on their terms. I was going to build a case. Patricia saw me typing later and raised a brow. "Organizing your thoughts. Organizing my evidence." She smiled. "You're good. I'm tired of being underestimated." That night, Jude finally fell into a deep, steady sleep. His vitals looked better than they had in days. I sat beside him with the lights low and just watched him breathe. No drama, no alarms, just the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of his chest. He looked so peaceful, and I hated that my family had polluted even that. I wasn't angry anymore. I was past angry. I was focused. And focus, in my experience, was where the real damage started. The morning Jude's progress reversed, I knew it before the machines did. His skin had a strange, grayish hue. His breaths were shallower, even with the support. Something in my gut twisted, and it wasn't from hunger or fear. It was recognition. The same way I'd known something was off on recon patrols before a roadside bomb blew. That sixth sense, honed from near-death experiences and bad leadership, kicked in while staring at my son's chest. Patricia came by with rounds. Her expression went tight the second she checked the chart. "His O2 requirements are up by 8%. I nodded. I already knew. Respiratory's adjusting the vent settings. This might just be a temporary dip? Might, in ICU speak, meant we're hoping this doesn't spiral. By noon, the dip had turned into a dive. Jude had his first bradycardia episode since week 1. His heart rate dropped so low that the machine screamed again. Same sound, different cause. Patricia and another nurse worked in tandem, pumping the oxygen bag, administering meds, until his heart rate slowly climbed back up. I stood still, didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't blink. I was way past blinking. Dr. Evans came in at midnight. She'd been off shift, but Patricia had called her personally. "Grace," she said softly, "I hear that Jude is having a setback. We're doing everything we can." "What changed?" I asked. Dr. Evans hesitated. "It could be an infection, but cultures haven't shown anything. Stress is a factor. Systemic instability, even brief, can throw them back days or weeks." I didn't need a medical degree to understand what she meant. The unplugging incident. That wasn't nothing. That was a trigger. I looked down at my son, so tiny he looked like a hospital supply error, and felt something crack behind my ribs. Not a sob, not grief, something harder, something useful. I stayed awake for 46 hours straight. Every beep, every alarm, I was there before the nurses. I read every line of the chart. I checked every tube, every port, every wire. I cross-referenced his meds with the NICU protocol binder, memorizing half the damn thing. On the second night, while sitting at Jude's bedside with a notebook full of timestamps, I heard whispering in the hallway. A nurse and a tech were talking low. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but sleep deprivation sharpens your hearing in a weird way. "Did you see that clip on TikTok? The one with the girl and the baby?" "Yeah, I think that's the family from yesterday. She unplugged the monitor, right? Allegedly. And she posted about being an ICU advocate. Disgusting?" I didn't move. I didn't interrupt. I just let it sink in. It was out there. Valerie's little influencer moment had hit the wrong crowd. And now? It was doing what social media does best, spinning out of control. I took a deep breath for the first time in hours. In the early morning haze, a different nurse named Sarah, whom I didn't know well, came over during a shift change. She looked tired but solid, the kind who's been around the block. She sat beside me and said quietly, "You military?" I glanced up. "Army." She nodded as if that explained everything. "Thought so. We don't forget people like you. The ones who don't scream when things go south. The ones who watch and write and wait. You're planning something?" I didn't respond. She just smiled and walked away. I looked down at Jude, his chest still working too hard, his heart rate finally back in range, and whispered, "They think this is over. They think I'll just be grateful he lived." His fingers twitched slightly, as if he were responding. I pulled my chair closer, opened the notebook again, and wrote in big block letters across the top of a new page, "No more warnings." I started by rearranging the supply drawer under the NICU recliner, not because it needed cleaning, but because I needed control over anything. The nurse watching me didn't interrupt. She probably assumed I was nesting. I wasn't. I was preparing. I had already filed the request for footage. Patricia confirmed that legal had received it, and that someone from patient relations would follow up soon, which in hospital language meant maybe by the time Jude hit kindergarten. I wasn't waiting for their timeline. In my Army days, we used to say, "If the command's too slow, get creative." That mindset never left me. I opened my laptop and logged into an old email I hadn't touched in years. It was the one I used for non-official Army side work, paperwork, backups, insurance forms, the boring stuff, but it was clean, unlinked, private. Then I created a new folder, OP Clean Cut. Inside, I started dragging in everything I had, screenshots of Valerie's post, the TikTok clip screen recorded, the NICU incident report, hospital badge photos from my mother's social media. I sent time-stamped messages warning them not to touch anything, and a photo I'd snapped months ago of Valerie holding up a fake med school lab coat for her blog while drinking wine in the background. One by one, I gave each file a title and a number. Evidence, no complaints, no stories, just proof. I remembered something a surgeon once told me on deployment. If the truth is on your side, you don't have to shout, just document. I wasn't shouting, I was building. While Jude slept, I wrote out a contact list. Not friends, not family, institutions' oversight boards, university ethics committees, academic reference checkers. I had briefly worked with press contacts on a Veterans for Healthcare campaign years ago. I didn't even know if those emails still worked. It didn't matter. The structure was what I needed. The method kept me calm. That afternoon, Valerie posted another photo. This time it was her standing outside the hospital. Caption: Some people break, I get stronger. Frey Resilience Women in Medicine. I read it twice, then once more, just to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. Resilience. Jude's vitals had dipped again that morning. Another minor episode quickly corrected, but each one shaved a sliver of peace off my already unstable nerves. The idea that she could brand herself off the back of my son's suffering made my hands shake. So, I used that energy. I went back through my files, found the scholarship foundation listed in her bio, public information, and found the name of their interview committee, also public. Then, I wrote my first anonymous email. It didn't accuse, it didn't editorialize, it simply stated, "You may want to reconsider the character of one of your applicants. See attached video. Incident occurred in NICU at St. Eleanor Medical Center, Cedar Falls." I attached the clip. No commentary. Let them interpret it for themselves. I wrote 3 more emails that night to her school's student conduct board, to the residency placement office, to the national board overseeing clinical internship accreditation. Each had a slightly different version of the facts, still neutral, still calm, still deadly. By midnight, I'd received 2 auto replies and 1, "Thank you for your concern. We'll review." It was enough to keep going. Patricia stopped by with her usual late shift coffee and raised an eyebrow at my laptop tabs. "You starting a blog? Something like that?" She handed me the cup. "If I ever get into trouble, I want you on my side." I gave her the smallest smile I'd managed in days. "Trouble's already here. I'm just organizing the ammo." After Patricia left, I pulled up one more contact, Robert Cross, former Army JAG, now a private malpractice and liability attorney. He was also Harrison's college roommate. I hadn't talked to Robert in over a year, but I didn't hesitate. I typed out the facts, included the hospital's incident report link, and added the NICU camera request number. I ended the message with one line: "I'm not looking to sue the hospital, but I need to know every option I've got against the people who endangered my child." I hit send. Then I closed the laptop, stood up, and looked at the monitors again. Jude's numbers were holding steady. Good, because I had work to do. Robert Cross called the next morning. I picked up before the first ring finished. "I read everything," he said. "And Grace, this isn't just gross, it's criminal." That's what I needed to hear. "Look, the hospital won't be liable. They've documented everything by the book. But your parents, Valerie, they're in deep. Interfering with life support equipment. That's reckless endangerment. If Jude had coded, we'd be talking manslaughter charges." "It almost did?" "I know," Robert said. "We can't press charges ourselves, but we can nudge the right departments. You document. I'll guide." Already ahead of you. I hung up, opened my laptop again, and kept stacking the file pile higher. I started calling it what it was, a digital war chest. For each new piece of content they posted, I took screenshots. I saved the dates, the captions, the comments, and the hashtags. Valerie reposted a filtered shot of herself in scrubs, captioned, "When life gets hard, the strong get clinical." That went in the folder. Mom posted in a private Facebook group about how certain mothers couldn't forgive even though nobody got hurt. That went in too. Dad commented under a political meme, saying, "Back in my day, babies didn't need all these fancy tubes to survive." I saved and labeled it, "Walter Monroe, Stupidity PDF." I wasn't even angry anymore. I was systematic. I expanded on old material posts from months ago where Valerie had claimed she was shadowing in pediatric trauma while clubbing in Vegas, according to her tagged location. Screenshots of DMs she sent under a burner account, flirting with med school advisors. One thread in particular stood out, where she asked how to massage patient stories for her scholarship essay. It reeked of fraud. I archived it all. Then I found something gold, a deleted tweet, screenshotted by someone and posted in a Reddit thread, showing Valerie bragging about hacking a reference letter by impersonating a professor's assistant. The post was 2 months old. The replies weren't flattering. That went in a separate folder labeled Academic Misconduct. I didn't have to make anything up. I just had to stop pretending I hadn't seen it before. Harrison finally FaceTimed between drills. His face was lined with worry, but when I told him everything I was compiling, he nodded slowly, as if he were watching someone dismantle a bomb, wire by wire. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. "No, but I'm productive." He knew better than to argue with that. That night, Patricia gave me a heads up. Patient Relations approved the footage release. They'll send it through legal in the morning. I'll be ready. The next morning, I received a download link in my inbox. It came with the usual disclaimers: internal use only, do not distribute, protected under privacy regulations. I clicked it anyway. The footage showed everything. 3:12 p.m.'s dad reaching for the outlet. 3:13 p.m. Jude's vitals crashing. 3:14 p.m. Valerie holding her phone, brushing her hair behind her ear while monitors screamed in the background. 3:16 p.m. Nurses swarming. Dad still holding the damn charger. 3:20 p.m. Security walking them out while Mom argued and Valerie looked bored. No voice audio, just action, which made it worse somehow. I watched it 3 times, not to feel anything, but to memorize every movement, every face. Then I clipped the key moments into a separate file, trimmed, sharpened, and date-stamped. I renamed the file Monroe NICU Incident Master MP4. I attached it to a draft email. Subject line: Urgent Medical Ethics Concern. Recipients: every contact I'd previously listed. Then I sat back, stared at the screen, and hovered over the send button. Not out of hesitation, but out of calculation. I'd spent my entire life being the one who let it go, who stayed quiet to keep the peace. But peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the absence of people like them in your life. I clicked send. Then I made coffee. Then I went back to the incubator and checked Jude's numbers. Oxygen holding. Heart rate steady. His tiny hand moved slightly on the blanket. Not a twitch this time, a curl, a grip forming. Good, I expected silence. That's usually how these things go, emails into the void. Bureaucrats sitting on their hands. But the first reply came within 4 hours from the Office of Student Integrity at Northbridge Medical. "Thank you for your submission. This has been escalated to the Ethics Review Board." Escalated. There's a word that says, "We see it. We're not ignoring it." The second reply came from the Scholarship Foundation. Same tone. "We've received the materials and will begin an internal review." By that evening, my inbox was full of receipts. Even better, my phone was full of notifications. It started small. A friend texted, "Is this your sister trending on Reddit?" Then another, "Dude, this NICU video is insane." I clicked the link. Someone on a nursing subreddit had posted a blurred version of the security footage. Low quality, watermarked, but recognizable. You couldn't hear the alarms, but you could see the panic, the body language, the unplugging. Caption: "This is why family visitors need strict rules." Baby nearly flatlined for a phone charge. The post blew up. Thousands of upvotes, hundreds of comments from nurses, parents, preemie moms, ethics professors. Everyone had an opinion, and none of them were good for Valerie. Someone had cropped a still from the video and overlaid it with her Instagram handle. Then another user posted side-by-side screenshots her TikTok from that same day set against the exact frame where Jude's monitor goes dark. The internet ran with it. Far oxygen 4 likes, harsh unplugged life support, and the one that stuck the plugged out baby. Within 48 hours it went beyond Reddit, hitting parenting Facebook groups, medical TikTok, and even a few watchdog Twitter accounts specializing in influencers behaving badly. Valerie's follower count dropped by the minute. One of her med school peers posted a video saying, "This girl tried to lecture me on compassion last week. Then she let a baby crash for a selfie light. It got 500,000 views. She turned off comments. Then she made her account private. Then she deleted her bio. Then she posted a generic black square with the caption, 'I'm taking time to heal. Please respect my journey.' It didn't work. The internet may have a short memory, but it never forgets completely. The more she tried to hide, the more people dug. Then it spread to my parents. Screenshots of their Facebook posts praising Valerie as future Dr. Monroe were shared next to the hospital incident. Comments poured in, most of them scathing. Dad tried to clap back on one thread, saying, "You weren't there? You don't know the context?" Someone replied with, "You're right. We weren't there, but your hand unplugging the machine sure was." I didn't gloat. I didn't comment. I just kept archiving. One night, Patricia came by during shift change, dropped a folder on my lap, and said, "You're going to want to read page 3. It was an internal memo circulated among hospital leadership, confirming that due to the attention around the Monroe incident, St. Eleanor Medical was instituting a new visitor policy for NICU access. Tighter restrictions, security screenings, mandatory education before entry. I read it 3 times. They changed the policy because of what my family did. Because I didn't shut up. Caleb had a good day. No dips, no alarms. He kept his O2 levels steady all afternoon. I held his hand through the incubator window and whispered, "Look at you, making hospital reform happen." He twitched in response. "I'll count that as a high five." That same evening, I got a message from an anonymous account. No name, no profile picture, just a screenshot of a group chat. It was Valerie's classmates, and they were sharing memes about her. Plug her into ethics class. She clearly missed it. Cruel? Maybe, but not inaccurate. I didn't use it. The ball was rolling. The public had seen enough, and the people in power, schools, boards, hospitals, suddenly realized they couldn't ignore this without looking complicit. My family thought their reputation would protect them. It turns out that reputations burn just fine when you throw them into a fire made of your own choices. Harrison flew back that weekend. I didn't ask him to. He just showed up at Caleb's bedside holding 2 coffees and a duffel bag, as if he was reporting for deployment. When I saw him, I exhaled for the first time in days. Not a metaphor. A literal breath I hadn't realized I was holding. He kissed Caleb's forehead through the isolette, then turned to me. "I've seen less chaos in active combat." I handed him the folder I'd been keeping, the digital war chest printed out. He flipped through it slowly. Midway, he stopped at the still from the security footage, the one where Dad holds the unplugged monitor cord while Valerie fixes her phone angle. "This is what they did," he muttered. "For a phone call." He didn't say another word. He didn't need to. Later that night, I searched Valerie Monroe on my phone. Autocomplete offered me 5 choices before I finished typing. One was Valerie Monroe ICU, and the other was Valerie Monroe Med School Scandal. She'd gone viral, just not in the direction she wanted. But what struck me wasn't the noise. It was the silence from her end. She'd stopped posting, stopped defending. Even my mom's Facebook had gone dark. No boomer memes, no posts about cancel culture, just nothing. That's when the cousin called, Danielle from Tennessee. I hadn't barely talked to her in 5 years, but my mom had asked her to do damage control. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened just to confirm. "Grace, I don't know all the details, but your mom says it's all a big misunderstanding. She's heartbroken. Please don't let this destroy your family." "Destroy?" I repeated the word in my head. "No, Danielle, they did that themselves." The next day, the knock came at Caleb's NICU room. It was the hospital administrator flanked by a legal representative. Both were polite, both uncomfortable. "We've concluded our internal investigation," the admin began. "While we can't comment on other patients, we wanted you to know that appropriate actions have been taken regarding the parties involved." I stared at her. "Define appropriate." The lawyer jumped in. "1 staff member has resigned. 2 visitors have been banned permanently from NICU access and reported to relevant authorities. Are those visitors biologically related to my son?" "Unfortunately, yes." "Good." That night, I found out Dad had been suspended from his job. He worked as a hospital logistics director at a different facility. Ironically, the same kind of job where ignoring a red outlet sticker would get a nurse fired on the spot. Someone forwarded his involvement to his board. With the viral coverage, they had no choice but to act. His suspension was under review, the kind of review that's just a long hallway toward unemployment. Harrison leaned back in the NICU recliner, stared at the ceiling, and said, Do you think they get it yet? I think they're starting to. We didn't toast. We didn't high-five. There was nothing celebratory about it. It felt like watching a house collapse from inside another building. Quiet, distant. I wasn't cheering, I was observing. Another email hit my inbox. The state medical board had officially opened a file on Valerie Monroe. There was no hearing date yet, but the words, ongoing character review, were in the subject line. Her legal dream was now balancing on a wire, and she was the one who had shaken it. Patricia stopped by again during the night shift. She didn't bring coffee this time, just stood at the incubator, watching Caleb breathe, steady and strong. You've been here every day since the unplugging, she said. Not going anywhere. Most people would have fallen apart. You filed incident reports, built a legal case, exposed fraud. I protected my son. She nodded once. We talked about you in the staff lounge, you know. The charge nurse who watched the video said, You didn't scream? You didn't flinch? You moved, combat training. Screaming wastes time? She smiled and whispered. You're the kind of mom people remember. I turned back to Caleb, who just kicked his tiny foot like he was trying to break out of the swaddle. He didn't know the storm that had been swirling around him, and he didn't need to, because it was finally starting to quiet down, and that silence, that was the sound of consequences landing. The first bill hit their mailbox the same day Caleb crossed 4 pounds. It wasn't from me. It came from the state, a formal notice of pending charges for reckless endangerment of a minor and tampering with life, sustaining medical equipment. There was no courtroom yet, no trial, just a heads up. But in the legal world, that kind of heads up might as well be a starting pistol. Jake called. They'll panic, he said. They'll lawyer up, which means they'll bleed cash. How much? If they want to stay out of prison. 6 figures. Dad didn't have 6 figures. Mom didn't either. I knew their savings. That's the thing about criminal defense attorneys. They don't accept baked goods and Christmas cards. They take retainers, big ones. Sure enough, the fallout started within days. Dad resigned voluntarily from the hospital logistics job. His volunteer position at the church was gone. Mom's book club sent a group email suggesting they pause meetings for the foreseeable future. A cousin told me Valerie had moved out and taken a job folding polos at a high-end outlet mall. She told people it was temporary. They nodded. Then we shared the real story over wine. Meanwhile, Caleb passed another milestone, full feeds without the tube. His cheeks started to round out, and his eyes stayed open longer. He didn't know his grandparents were in legal jeopardy. He didn't know his aunt had become a meme. He didn't know any of it, and didn't need to. But I did, because the world doesn't always protect the vulnerable unless someone forces it to do so. The first court summons came in a cream-colored envelope stamped by the district attorney's office. I wasn't in the room when they opened it, but my cousin David was. He texted me, Your dad nearly fell over. Your mom cried? Valerie said, They can't be serious. They were serious. When you unplug life support, people get serious real fast. Their new attorney, Whittaker, tried reaching out to me, saying he was hoping for a restorative approach. I replied with one sentence. I restore things that are worth saving. He didn't follow up. The pre-trial process began quietly. Motions, depositions, a lot of legal dance moves that would have overwhelmed someone who wasn't coached by a malpractice attorney and married to a National Guard intel officer. We tracked every move, every deadline, every public record filing. Valerie wasn't charged technically, she didn't unplug anything. But her name was included in the report. Her presence, her inaction, her attitude, it stained everything. Her future law career vaporized. Dad pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, criminal negligence, 6 months in county jail and probation. Mom took a deal, community service, anger management classes, and a court-ordered ban from any medical facility for 3 years. She cried in front of the judge and begged for understanding. The judge said, You endangered an infant for a phone charger. I don't think you understand. No media frenzy, no flashing cameras, just a sterile courtroom, a wary judge, and a family realizing that their consequences couldn't be edited, cropped, or downplayed with excuses. They'd lost everything they used to weaponize a status, perception, networks. All that remained was a baby boy they could no longer reach and a daughter who would never open another letter with their return address again. I didn't throw a party when Caleb came home. I wanted to. I'd imagined the balloons, the onesies with corny slogans, the cake with the tiny stethoscope made of frosting. But when that day came 3 months to the hour after my parents pulled the plug, I didn't want noise. I wanted quiet. I wanted peace. And I wanted skin to skin. Harrison held the car seat steady while I unbuckled him. Caleb made a little grunting sound, his preemie cry, still soft but determined. His lungs were stronger now. No more oxygen tank, no more tubes. Our front door creaked like always. The hallway smelled like home. We took turns holding him on the couch. No beeping monitors, no nurse watches, just his little heartbeat, fast but steady against my chest. Harrison whispered, "We made it." I kissed Caleb's head. That night, I sat in his nursery for hours, just staring. We'd painted the walls sage green back when I was still pregnant, naive, and dreaming about full-term delivery and normal maternity leave. None of those things happened. But this room waited for him anyway, and he made it to it, alive, breathing, fighting. The Caleb clause the next day, we had our first pediatric follow-up. In the waiting room, I talked with a mom beside me. She had twins, also preemies, now toddlers. She asked our last name. When I told her, her face shifted. "Wet," she said slowly. "Your son, he was in the news, wasn't he? Your Grace Monroe." I braced. "Yeah, unfortunately." She looked stunned, then smiled widely. "Oh my God, my husband's firm is Morrison and Albright. He was the hiring partner that interviewed your sister. He tells everyone that story during onboarding now. The phone charger girl. That's what they call her. Not to mock, just as a warning about character. He calls it the Caleb clause." I laughed. I couldn't help it. She looked down at Caleb, now asleep in his carrier, and said, "He saved us from a mistake. Your baby saved a lot of people." Back home, I told Harrison what happened. "She wanted to be a doctor," he said. But he became the one who healed people. I received a letter from the hospital ethics board. They thanked me for prompt reporting, clear documentation, and your remarkable composure under extreme emotional strain. They also included a formal record stating that noon ICU visitation protocols had been permanently revised because of us, because a baby almost didn't make it, because a mother refused to let that be the end. I put the letter in Caleb's memory box next to his hospital bracelet and the first knit hat he wore. He wasn't just a preemie. He was a miracle, and he was finally home. The last envelope came with no return address, just a name scrawled across the flap in handwriting I recognized too well: my cousin Audrey. I hadn't barely talked to her in 5 years, but my mom had asked her to do damage control. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened just to confirm. "Grace, I don't know all the details, but your mom says it's all a big misunderstanding. She's heartbroken. Please don't let this destroy your family." Destroy. I repeated the word in my head. "No, Danielle, they did that themselves." That night after Caleb fell asleep, I opened the letter, 6 pages typed. My mother's voice was on every line. She didn't apologize. Not really. She called it a tragic misunderstanding and blamed stress, miscommunication, and me. Dad had written a few paragraphs too. He said prison gave him time to reflect, not regret. They asked if we'd consider a fresh start, and they enclosed a photo, not of themselves, but of Valerie sitting on a patio somewhere, holding a drink, smiling like she hadn't almost let a baby die. I folded everything back up, slid it into a drawer, and didn't bother shredding it. Some trash isn't even worth that level of effort. That week, we hosted a small dinner for people who mattered. Patricia brought a homemade peach cobbler and became his honorary grandmother. Dr. Evans teared up when Caleb babbled. In her direction, Robert Cross showed up late, carrying a folder labeled, "Closed case." That night, after guests were gone, I sat on the porch with Harrison and watched fireflies blink across the yard. You think they'll ever stop trying? I asked. No, Harrison said. But they don't get to try here anymore. A breeze rolled through, soft and clean. I used to think blood made you family, I said. He turned to me. I smiled. Nah, family shows up, family protects. Family doesn't yank a plug because a phone hit 10%. Real family guards life support with their own damn hands. That was what we had now. Our chosen family, built from fire, not photos. People who came through when it counted. I never replied to the letter, never sent pictures, never shared updates. They didn't get access to Caleb's milestones. They didn't deserve any version of him. One night, when he was 4 and already obsessed with Dr. Kits and stethoscopes, he asked why he didn't have grandparents like his friend Lucas. I crouched down beside him. Some people, I said carefully, aren't safe to be around, even if they're related. So instead, we built our own family. The kind that keeps you safe. The kind that shows up. He nodded, as serious as only a preschooler can be. Nurse Patricia is my grandma, right? Exactly right, I said. He beamed. She's really good at cobbler. Yes, she is. He went back to playing doctor, making beeping noises as he held his toy monitor over his teddy bear. All good? He said. Yes, baby, all good. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's not rage or fire or a public spectacle. It's quiet. It's a child taking his first steps in peace, far away from people who once treated his life like an inconvenience. It's choosing boundaries over blood. It's choosing love over legacy. It's choosing to protect the future instead of excusing the past. They wanted forgiveness without accountability. What they got was silence. We didn't ruin their lives. They did that on their own. We just made sure the truth didn't stay buried. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the choices we make and the consequences that follow, please leave a comment below. Share your thoughts, your experiences, and subscribe to join our community. We tell stories that don't flinch.